What's going on, guys, and welcome to a guide on how to use Yamiko. Notice how I said how to use and not how to build. I see plenty of guides out there covering how to build characters, what weapons and artifacts to grind for, and plenty of damage demonstration vids out there, but not many detailing exactly how to use these characters in different situations. I find myself helping out a lot of players who don't understand either the subtle or drastic differences between characters outside of what weapons to use. So in this vid, I will be going over her complete kit and playstyle while also going over her strengths and weaknesses in various situations this game throws at you. So let's dive into what's good, what's bad, and what's totally gamer about Yamiko. Okay, so first let's go over Yamiko's kit and my current Yamiko as of the making of this vid. So I got it to 90, but I was actually going between 80 and 90 putting together these clips, so the damage you see will vary from one clip to the next. That's why I say we're not worried about damage here. As far as the weapon goes, I wasn't able to farm enough primos to get her weapon, so I have been bouncing around different weapons to see what I can use on her. For this one, I'll be using the Solar Pearl. And the artifact set, I slapped together artifacts I already had built from other attempts to grind for other characters and stuff, so I put these together to hold her over until I have time to farm another artifact set. But that's going to take time since I'm focused right now currently. Since I've done so much artifact grinding, I'm currently only focused on getting all of my characters' talents up across the characters that I regularly use in the game, which are quite a few. So once I'm done with that, then I will begin searching and figuring out what I feel would be a proper set for her and proper build. Aside from that, again, as you can see, she's C0, and her talents, I have this one at 9, her skill, but in a lot of these clips they were actually at either 7 or 8. I believe at 8. So, like I said, you will see a vary of damage difference between some of these clips. So again, we're not focused on the damage output. I'm gonna do a damage output video later on once I get her fully built, which is going to take some time. So that's something that will happen in the future. In any case, let's go over what her abilities do. Of course, her regular attack summons forth Kitsune spirits, initiating a maximum of 3 attacks. We know how that works. Now, the problem with her attack is that it is the shortest ranged attack in, like, almost in the game as far as like any mage style catalyst users and everything. I don't think anyone else's is shorter unless maybe Cleese. I'm not sure. I didn't really compare the two, but yeah, it's really short and it takes a long time even for the normal attacks to come out, so it's not that great. Of course, her bread and butter is all in her skill. Her skill does so much that we're going to be going over. So the main thing about this skill, because you can pretty much read everything that's going on here, the main thing about it is that she can throw out 3. The cooldown is only 4 seconds each. She has easy ways to cancel her cooldown built into her kit and everything, so and the duration for each one is 14 seconds. So not only is this her best skill, it's designed in a way to where there's never a time when you can't have all 3 of these pillars out. Now, this is the main thing you're going to be using. You're going to be using this more so as a normal attack. This is her normal attack. This is, I don't know what this is. This is disappointing. But this right here is her normal attack through and through. And it's also her best attack. When we get around to it, there's also her burst. This one is even scaled off of her skills, so even still, this is the most important thing in her entire kit. Her burst, as we all know, it will strike the enemy down with a huge bolt of lightning, and if you have all 3 of the Kitsune out, of the Sensu Sakura out, excuse me, then it'll fire 3 additional times. So this is only good because of this. So again, this is her bread and butter. This is basically what you're going to be spamming as you use her. And so going over her passive talents, first passive talent, the Shrine Sacred Blade. When casting Great Secret Art Tenko Kenshin, each Sensho Sakura destroyed resets the cooldown for one charge of the Yakan Invocation Sensho Sakura. And I know I kind of butchered that a little bit, trying to speed through this here. But basically what this does is pretty much resets her skill after using the burst. So the one thing that the burst does do is that, you know, after you use it up, the big worry was how long it will take to get these pillars back out to continue firing lightning. The good thing is immediately, pretty much. And then her second talent, for every point of elemental mastery Yamiko possesses, will increase Sensho Sakura's damage by 0.15%. Now, this damage increase, I've tested it out from throwing artifacts around from my different characters to see what we can do with it. I raised her EM up to like over 500 and it didn't give a huge damage difference overall. Now, it's not to say that it's not good. You should definitely look to put some elemental mastery into her for that, but it's not a priority thing because it's not going to scale that far. You still build her focusing on her attack and electric bonus, and of course crit rate and crit damage, since that's what she gains a lot of as she levels up. And so that's pretty much her setup, and that's her kit, and that's how I have her built so far. I still have a lot of work to do on mine, but I know nobody has her completely built yet because we're still farming the weekly boss that she's attached to. It's still pretty early on for that. So next up is ways to play with Yamiko. Of course, it seems really simple. Her skill does boom, 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 but there's actually a whole lot more to that. You see, while the skill can be thrown out pretty easily and you can pretty much set them, the positioning is what's important. Positioning, and because with a lot of enemies that are still, you can trap them. You can move as you please depending on which way you're holding your direction, whether you're using a stick or playing on a keypad. And by utilizing it properly and everything, you can position these things exactly where you need to be. Not to mention, this skill actually, on top of everything else, acts as an additional dash. You could be running somewhere or even trying to run from enemies and get distance on them, and it would, with her, it's highly suggested, I highly suggest, before you even try to get distance on the enemy by dashing, use the skill. Get that extra distance with that, and before you even use any stamina, or even while you're just traversing, just, you know, out running around the fields, your stamina's starting to get low, trying to complete a time trial, you don't want to slow down, you got boom, 3 additional dashes, and you get to recover just a tad bit of stamina while you're at it. So definitely some perks on that point right there. So all in all, that's what it comes down to. Now again, her basic attack, this is one of these slower, it's almost as slow as Barbara's, like, in that sense. That's the one thing I don't like about Barbara. Everything else, I love Barbara so much with how well she heals and how well she takes damage, but when it comes down to how fast she can throw out a hit, it's much the same here. It's just like too slow, and with it being slow, it should have a greater range. The range is really short, so you got to make sure if you are going to use the normal attack on them, especially if you're running Solar Pearl like I'm currently doing, you got to be fairly close to them to do so. Thankfully, with this acting as an additional dash, you can also use this to actually get away from attacks. The downside is, even though I'm technically teleporting here, you cannot dodge with this. There's no perfect dodge with it. You can just get out of the way of danger. No perfect dodge. So that's pretty much how you can actually play with her. That's the base level. So now, next up, let's get into some demonstrations on how she works against the various enemies in the game. Now, when it comes to the Dominator of Wolves, she's definitely not soloing this enemy by herself, but she adds a great deal of electro damage that you can combine with fire to do a lot of damage to him and just pretty much shred through his health. Not to mention, as long as you keep those pillars out there, you're going to keep on doing damage to him no matter where he jumps. The biggest annoyance with this guy is how he pretty much swings his body around and can sometimes jump out of the way of attacks. So her essential Sakura will definitely make sure that you're continuously doing damage on him throughout the fight. And here in the fight with Agedaha, we have a situation where she can continue to add damage, but she's really not the best choice in this because of the fact that with her being a glass cannon like most Catalyst users are, you're going to need to make sure you have layers of healing and defense in order to keep her alive and so she can continue to do damage. And she's not going to be the best DPS against this character. There's better options out there, but she can do support damage. Burst support, DPS support is the way to go against this. Just make sure you have healing and shields to back her up. With Child, it's much the same. You want to keep her off field as much as possible, but first get those essential Sakura out before switching her out. You'll continue doing plenty of damage that you can use to combine with burst damage in order to take them down fairly quickly. Now in fighting Senora, it's a pretty interesting fight. The lightning definitely helps out. You can actually get through the first phase pretty quickly with her. On top of that, when she goes into her transformation, the little mid-phase part where you gotta break the ice down, if you have the pillars out while collecting them, it'll actually make it much faster. Much easier to actually knock the shields down as you're collecting them. And in the final phase, it just keeps up additional damage on the field just to make sure that no matter where she teleports, when she goes into a fire teleport, once she pops out, it's going to continue to get hit. So a lot of support damage, but still not your lead character in the fight. The Raiden no Inazuma Tono, oh man, shreds her. Lightning versus lightning. Yamiko is not the dominant lightning force on this battle. And then for our last weekly boss, Divalent, this is one where it's kind of hit or miss. I've seen the demonstrations and I've tested it for myself, and yes, it is true. The IQ of the targeting is definitely off in this fight, as it'll hit the little flying things that you use to create the wind tunnels. However, you can avoid this by making sure that you set these up outside of their range, like towards the center. If you do that, then they won't mess up the targeting as much, but it's still a pain. There's still much better options out there against Divalent as opposed to using Yamiko for this one. They need to fix the targeting, that's for sure. Now, obviously, we want to keep her the hell away from the Electro Hypostasis and the Electro Manifestation. So yeah, moving on. She does a decent job against the Wind Cube and can even strike him mid-air. Doesn't always take damage because of the stupid animations that the cubes go through, but the little damage it does throw in there allows you to take him out just a little bit faster than the norm. As far as Cryo Registine goes, it's the same old story. He gets wrecked. Totally wrecked. Rest in peace, my friend, and thank you for all your sacrifices. Much the same for the Pyro version as well. As soon as he's down, it's pretty much over. Same deal. Against the Cryo Cube, it's not the best option, but it is doable. It's still better just to use a fire character and just completely melt the hell out of this thing, but yeah, it's technically doable. However, she completely owns and solos the Oceanid battle. Oceanid stands no chance against this. Like, even the tougher enemies that should be able to eliminate her, being that she is much of a glass cannon with such low defense, you just throw out your Sakura and get out the way and let them do the work for you. Keep your distance and you'll survive. I just needed healing only a couple of times for this demonstration. Most of it, I just ran around in circles and let my Sakura do the work. Next, we got the Primo Rio Vishap. Now, this one is another one where you're gonna need plenty of healing in order to protect you. Not as much as some of the other battles, as long as you got your perfect dodges in and know how to place them, you know, better than I'm doing right now. But another thing that gives her an advantage in this fight is that if you do have enough healing and shield on you, as long as you stay in the Vishap's face, he will not go underground. He'll stay still, which lines him up perfectly for getting her burst off. When it comes to the Perpetual Mechanical Array, he's an annoying boss for sure, but As long as you're lining up the right reactions at the right time, she becomes pretty valuable in this, especially since he's moving around so much. The Sakura are making sure he's being struck at all times by something and always taking damage from somewhere. I was surprised to see that she turned out to be pretty effective against the pyrohypostasis. Basically the first phase where you gotta get rid of the fire shield protecting the actual cube shield, the layers of defense that this thing has. The Sakura made sure he was getting hit at all times and slowly breaking down that extra layer of fire shield. I was actually pleasantly surprised by that. It was quite honestly the fastest I ever took the shield out, because as we all know, it's really hard to hit this guy as he's moving around all over the place. And with the water hypostasis, technically she can solo this fight too, as long as she's not taking any big hits. Most likely, solo with the healer at her back. And her Sakura work well with setting up traps for those little water slimes that try to prolong the fight by healing the cube. When it comes down to the Golden Wolf Lord, again, this is one where she has a slight advantage. Putting the Sakura down means that at certain points while he's flying around you, you will be able to strike him and continue to do plenty of damage. But this is not one that you can do solo. You have to put a team around that can help her out. This is one where you do want to put her with a Geo, because of that one phase where you need to use Geo to break down those stupid absorption things. I don't even know what they're called. I don't care. I just hate them. When it comes to the Coral Defenders, they're really not a great option to use Yamiko in, because they jump around so much. They actually get out of range of the Sakura fairly easily, making most of her strategies not too viable in this fight. So it's better to generally avoid using Miko in this fight, only because of the fact that you gotta do so much running and she can't really do anything for knocking the enemies off of the walls or anything like that. She's at a really big disadvantage in this battle. Next up, how does she work against the regular overworld enemies, the regular ones you just run into all the time? But when it comes to the mechanical foes, she shines pretty well, mixing her up with either ice or water enemies. She can trap them and do a lot of damage. And then of course, throwing a wind character in there to get some swirl effects in never hurts. All in all, she's really good against taking on multiple enemies, so long as there's no torches or anything else to redirect the targeting on the AI. When it comes to more mobile and tank heavy characters like the freaking Samurai, she does a good job when paired up with allies that can help amplify her electricity, or ice characters that can use that advantage to get more physical damage in. She may not be a crowd control character, but she is great at hitting characters in those hard to reach places. It's very hard to hide, because even though the AI may not be the greatest as far as picking a target, when it picks a target, it never misses. It has perfect targeting in that sense. But even when it comes to enemies that normally run around a lot, move around a lot, as long as they're within range of the Sakura, no matter how they move, they're going to continue to get hit by it. Another great advantage is that you can set up those Sakura in certain places and just get out the way, knowing that they're going to set off an explosion or something. You know, the normal things that would normally just kill you right off the bat. Throwing the Sakura down and giving yourself a moment to get out the way, I just love it. It's just setting traps. And as long as the Abyss Mage is not Electro type, those Sakura will wear down his shield pretty quickly, especially if you have a fair amount of EM. Like I say, you don't have to push the EM into overdrive. A decent amount, like the 100 that I have, is enough to do the trick. And even in the Spiral Abyss situations that we find ourselves in these days, where we have to worry about those enemies behind those electrical fields, the Sakura will be able to take care of them so long as you're planting them in range. Remember what I said before about her Sakura skill also working as a dodge? Well, again, it doesn't work as a perfect dodge. You can't be in range of the attack and expect to not take damage. I wish they did, considering she is teleporting, but that's just the way they did it. But as long as you're timing your movement correctly, you can in fact dodge attacks. The idea of using this is just to make sure that your dodging is getting you out of the range of the attack altogether. Like I said, it's like an additional 3 dashes. If you mess it up, you're gonna die. Because again, we're talking about a glass cannon here. But as long as you keep your timing correctly, you can pretty much avoid most danger. In fact, I would dare to say that once you get this method down, like I've been practicing, you can avoid more danger with her than you can with most other or any other Catalyst user, in my opinion. So definitely a plus in the maneuverability. She's not the fastest, but she has her ways. And just to point out a few other things about her skill, even though the teleport animation doesn't act as a perfect dodge or any invisibility frames, it does allow her to phase through walls that would normally keep her trapped, walls that enemies would put up to trap her or otherwise to keep her out. And lastly, it is a dream for dealing with those flying enemies that try to just stay out of range, either flying too high above you or too far away for you to hit with your attacks. Oh, that's no longer a problem with the Sakura down. They'll continue hitting him for a good while they're trying to get away. And then the other beautiful part about it is that these enemies are wired to still chase after you if you run too far away from them. So you can throw those Sakura down, run in the opposite direction, and they will ignore the danger and just get murdered trying to pursue you. So overall, when it comes down to taking on mobs in the field, she has her weak points, but she also has her very, very strong points. Alright, the summary. So let's go ahead and just lay it out. The good. She creates a great deal of electro coverage on the field that can be taken advantage of for reactions. Plus, she can work with a high number of characters in the game, which adds to her versatility. Her skill cooldown is low while the duration is fairly high, so you can keep the Sakura on the field at all times while swapping through other characters' skills and bursts. And her skill and burst do great in most single enemy situations. The bad. Her burst has a very high cost and cooldown, so you have to build your team accordingly to get around the issue. Her normal and charge attacks are too short range and slow, and she has a passive that only benefits her skill when it should buff her general kit and reflect on her stats. Not to mention that her skill targeting IQ is not the best, and even her burst can at times hit the wrong target in multi-target situations. The teleport animation of her skill is just an animation and has no invisibility frames like similar moves, on top of having the lowest HP and defense in the game, making her a very vulnerable glass cannon. And for at least as of the making of this vid, she does not have a dedicated artifact set. The gamer. Her kit makes her unique among Catalyst users. Though you can't use her skill for a perfect dodge, it can however be used as 3 extra dashes, allowing you to avoid danger when the timing and spacing is right. She is easily used as a damage support or sub DPS, and she can even be a main DPS if you work towards such a build. Her skill and perfect targeting handles those pesky flying enemies, the non-electro anyway, and although not everyone is going to like her playstyle, those who do like it and seek to master it will find themselves with a satisfying payoff like I did on some of my test runs. Overall, I give Yamiko's playability a 7 out of 10. She is not the best character, but is far from the worst. And I get that we all had higher expectations from her, and hopefully Hoyoverse fixes the issues that a lot of players are running into. But overall, even at C0, Miko is a great choice for an elemental or full electro team, but only if you like the playstyle, as it's not for everyone. And that's my review on how to use Yamiko. If you liked the vid, be sure to hit that like and subscribe, and also let me know which character you'd like me to cover in the comments below. And as always, till next time, take care of yourselves. I'm out of here.